Actually, I will be logging off within 5 minutes. That's why.
Excuse me? Shall we get started now? We good to start now? Okay. Okay, so like I was telling you about transference. Transference is projection of feelings about a formative onto the doctor or the physician that the patient is meeting. So, like an example, I'll tell you. Now, there's this patient who has come in. You're the attending physician, and the patient says, "Hey, doc, when I look at you, the way you talk, the way you behave with me, the way you respond towards my questions and all, I kind of feel like you look like my dad. He was really so caring, like you are carrying me." Okay, so he kind of projects his feelings, his emotions about the formative. The formative here is his father, or maybe some other guy. He might probably like him, he doesn't like him, it doesn't matter. Okay, he's projecting his feelings about a formative onto the physician. That is transference. Transference of his emotions and feelings onto the physician. So if it's the other way around, like if the physician is transferring his, or the physician is projecting his feelings and emotions onto the patient, that is called countertransference. Okay, that is transference and countertransference. Next. Now there's this really weird table, this milestones table. There's nothing you can do about it. All that we need to do is like write it on a paper, stick it like wherever you feel like, maybe close to your bed or something. Have a look at it every time before you go to sleep and just before you wake. I mean, just after you wake up, because that's the only thing that can help you memorize this table. And it's not pretty much important. I mean, you don't have to memorize every single thing, but what you need to have is a general understanding, like what happens in what age group. Because there are certain questions where, like, if I'd say, there's this woman who brings in a child who is like 6 months old, and she's really concerned that the baby doesn't walk. I mean, she's really concerned if her milestones are up to the mark, or is the baby regressing, or is there some kind of mental retardation or physical retardation in his growth? Is he stunted? Okay, these kind of questions will be put on. So, like, you have to have a general sense of idea, like what happens at 6 months. Can the baby walk? I mean, can it stand? Okay, that's what you need to have. All right. So I'll just read out this to you, make few terms comfortable to you. So what happens at first birthday? That is at 12 months. At first birthday, he walks first steps. Okay, he talks first words. Okay, that's how you remember that. Okay, first steps, first words, first birthday. Okay, so I would recommend you take a snapshot of this particular table. It's like very big, actually. I mean, okay, so that it'll be easy for you to, again, in this in first aid. Actually, there's a lot to it. I mean, there's much more information, but I don't think that is required, and it's quite confusing in first aid. So rather, if you can make a note of this table, it'll be helpful for you. Okay. So first birthday, first steps, he throws ball, takes first steps, he can stand without support at first birthday. And fine motor, under fine motor, you have a 2-finger grasp. Okay, so 2-finger grasp is like the children, they pick up things with the index finger and their thumb, and everything, everything they find, they just try and put it in their mouth. So this is called pincer grasp. Pincer grasp, they pick up things with these 2 fingers. So this is fine motor, milestones at 1 year. Okay, Before that, they're trying to grab up with the whole of the hand. I mean, they can't really do those fine movements, but by 1 year, the wiring, I mean, the connections from the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system are much more grown. So they have this coordination, and they can use precisely their fingers in order to grasp things. Okay, that is two-finger grasp. In language, now they start speaking words other than mama and dada. So mama, dada, these are monosyllabic sounds. Monosyllabic sounds, they usually start by 6 months around, 5-6 months around, they start then. So apart from that, speaking words like asking for water and, saying that this is a bench, okay, like little words, if they're taught and trained, they can start speaking those single word, okay? That is language. And social and cognitive. Now, at around 9 months of age, separation, excuse me. So around 9 months of age, separation anxiety starts. Now, what is separation anxiety? So when this kid is taken away from the parent, they start crying, yelling. I mean, they really become so anxious that they are disconnected from their parents. So even when they're playing, like they run around to some distance and then look back and see that their parents are far away from them, they again run back to them. Okay, that is what is separation anxiety. Okay, this lasts for like around up to 2 years. So separation anxiety should last from 9 months to around 2 years, and it should stop there. Okay, if it's okay. Okay, you want to talk? I mean, you want me to talk about pincer grasp again, Vidhatri? Is that what you want? Okay. Just give me a minute. Okay, so that is separation anxiety. Okay, and they can also follow one-step commands with gestures. Like if I just order to that child like this way, so he understands that I'm asking him to sit. Or if I just say, he'll run towards you. So that is like understanding and following one-step commands with gestures. All this happens at 1 year of age. And what happens at 1.5 years of age? So now the child, he runs, he kicks a ball, and he can climb the stairs with 1 foot at one time on each step. So that's how he'll climb, okay, at 1.5 years. And regarding the fine motor thing, regarding these blocks, there can probably be 1 or 2 questions on the blocks. I mean, these children, they're given blocks to play, that building blocks, right? So how you can remember this is like, just multiply by a factor 3 to the age, and you'll get like how many blocks you can build in at that particular age. So if it's like 1.5 year old, just multiply it by 3, like around about 3.5. So that's what he can do. Like he can build 2 to 4 block building. Okay, at 18 months of age. Okay, then he can remove his own clothes. Okay, he can undress himself at 1.5 year of age. Then in language, what he can do is like he can start speaking some 10 to 25 words. Okay, so he knows those words. He can just utter those words, but he can form sentences. He can literally use the grammar in order to build sentences. Okay, at 18 months of age. Then among social and cognitive, he can understand what mine is. Like he understands that who he is. Like these things are mine. Like if there's a toy and it was presented to him on his birthday, and if you're trying to grab it, he'll tell you that it's mine. Okay, so that general sense of mine and yours starts from like around 18 months of age, 1.5 years of age. and he begins to play this pretend play. Like he pretends to play. He'll just sit down on the floor, take some toys or something, and he'll pretend to play with them. Okay, so that is pretend play. Okay, at 2 years of age, he can walk upstairs and downstairs with both feet on each step. Right, he still can't alternate between the steps. He's still putting both legs on the same step, and he can climb upstairs and downstairs as well. At 12 months of age, at 1.5 years of age, he used to only climb upstairs, but he couldn't, come down. So by 2 years of age, now he can climb upstairs and come down as well. Okay, so like I said, multiply by a factor of 3. So 3 into 2, 6. So 6 cubes. He can make use of these 6 cubes to make a building now. Okay, and around about at 2 years, he can speak two word phrases. This is important to remember instead of remembering how many words he can use. Rather, you can simply make out he can talk 2 word sentences. Okay, at 2 years of age. Then he can follow 2-step commands as well. Like if I'd say, go to the kitchen, drink water. So there are 2-step commands. So he'll go to the kitchen and he'll drink water. Okay, that is 2-step command there. And he begins to play this parallel play. If the 2 children around 2 years of age, okay, there's no connection between them. They don't bond with each other, but they'll love to play. Not together, independently, but they'll play together. I mean, they'll play in the same area, but they'll play with their own self. They won't, collaborate with the other guy and stop playing with him. Okay, that is parallel play. And he toilet training usually begins around about 2 years of age, and they usually get trained by 3 years to the maximum by 5 years. Okay, so that is 2 years. At 2 years. Then at 3 years, he can walk upstairs, he can walk downstairs with alternating feet, like one foot on each step, right? So they can alternate between the steps. And now at 3 years, like tricycle. 3 years, tricycle, okay? Then he can copy a circle of 3 years. Circle might not be triangle, but close to a triangle, okay? Triangle, it's not clearly drawn, and he can kind of make a circle at 3 years of age, okay? And now at 3 years of age, what these children do is they love to play with the utensils making sounds. They just go into the kitchen, they take these spoons and all that, and they'll take all these utensils and they'll bang them around and kind of make that noise and all that. So they kind of love playing with that, okay? So that is at 3 years of age. And at 3 years of age, they can, 3 years, 3-word sentences. 2 years, 2-word sentences. 3 years, 3-word sentences. Okay. Now this is pretty important. So at 3 years of age, the child knows his gender. Okay, he's fixed now. I mean, gender identity usually is fixed by 2 to 3 years of age. So he knows the gender. Like if the child is a boy, he knows that he's a boy, and he has to act like a boy. He has to do things all. He uses he for to tell about himself. Okay, he has that general sense of who he is and what his gender is. And for suppose if there is gender dysphoria, which we'll talk about maybe tomorrow. Okay, what happens in gender dysphoria is a person he thinks he's a female trapped in a male body, or a person thinks he's a male trapped in a female body. Okay, so genetically and physically he's a male person, but his identity for gender is fixed as a female. He pretends to be a female. He would do things like girls. He would love things with girls, plays like them, talks like them, walks like them, try to dress up like them. Okay, that is a fixation of the gender at around 3 years of age. It's critically important because there are questions in this. You have to remember that around 2 to 3 years of age, there's gender fixation. Okay, and then imaginative play. This is the time now. If you would have seen this horror movie, this guy Toby, which this little girl plays with. Okay, so the kind of imaginary friends, they don't exist, but they still imagine that there are people who are trying to talk to them. It's not hallucinating precisely, but they kind of imagine friends that there's somebody in their company, and they try to play with them. They talk to them when they're playing. Like you build this thing, I'll do this thing. Okay, that is what this is all about. Imaginative play. Okay, they have imaginary friends. Okay, and then at 4 years of age, around about at 4 years of age, they can balance on one foot. They hop. Okay, that is what they do at 4 years of age, and at 4 years they can make a square. 4 years, square, 4 sides. Okay, that's what they can do. Now, and at 4 years, now is the time where these children, they kind of, they kind of bond with other people. They're trying to make friends, and they play cooperatively. Like they start playing games wherein there's a team effort. Like they love to play cricket, maybe football, wherein a team effort is required, not an individual play. Okay, so cooperative plays begin usually about 4 years of age. Okay, then they can identify colors at 4 years of age. Okay, at 5 years of age, they can skip, and they can, not kind of moonwalk probably, but they can walk backwards at least. Okay, so at 5 years of age, imagine a 5-year-old kid walking back, dancing like Michael Jackson. Just have that in the back of your mind, so that you can remember that at 5 years of age, they can walk backwards. Okay, now they can they can tie their own shoelace, and they can make triangles. They can make diamond figures. They can make star. 5 years, star. Okay, star. They can make stars at 5 years of age. Okay, and
4 years which they can walk backwards.
no, I mean it usually starts at the end of 4 years. So, is there a problem? Is there a question?
I'm just saying, like, these are so different in each book.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, absolutely, that's true. I mean, these are different in different books. That's the reason why I'm saying.
Some it says like visuals.
Yeah, actually, you're true. So that's the reason why I'm telling you, you're not trying to memorize this table. Just have a general sense of what's happening at what, trying to kind of link up, like at 5 years, around about 5 years of age, because the options are not going to be so close enough. In the first place, they're not going to give you a question of milestones. Okay, it will be some other questions wherein we'll have to use this information and try to answer that. Now, how that will be important, I'll tell you in the next slide. Okay, now, so this is all about the milestones. Okay, now we'll start talking about psychiatric pathology in childhood and infants. Now, infant deprivation syndrome. So infants are, they're critically important. I mean, they have to have this emotional bonding, and the kind of support and care you show to the infants is going to determine what kind of development they're going to have throughout their life. So this stage is really critically important. Okay, so during, when the baby is in the infant neonatal stage and in the infant stage, what you need to have is you need to show to the baby or the child all that affection and care, and you have to feed them nicely, dress them properly, maintain all the hygienic conditions in their surroundings and all that thing. Now, this is really important because children who are deprived of this love and care and affection from mostly parents, and just in case if the parents are not, the guardians, okay, and if they lack this thing, the social development and the physical development is going to critically, it's going to be stunted. So these, what is this happening? Okay, so when they're deprived of this love and care and affection, their social development and their physical development are both going to be affected. Okay, they're going to get compromised in these aspects, and if the deprivation of this love and care and affection to these infants, if it's prolonged for more than 6 months, then the changes are going to be irreversible. Okay, and in worst case scenario, the child can even die. Okay, there's a possibility that the infants might die because of lack of this emotional bondage. Okay, so that is important.
Even if he's being fed, but it's still like
He had no care, no affection. Nobody is caring him. He's crying, and nobody is coming to console him. Nobody's trying to, talk to him. Nobody's touching him. Even touch is a kind of language that the children understand. Right after the baby is born, it's the mother's touch that talks. I mean, that is the kind of language the baby understands. It doesn't know the words we're speaking. It can't comprehend what we're talking. So language is not just the words we talk. Even the touch. Excuse me. Yeah. So that the kind of when the mother takes the baby and touches to its own body. Okay. The temperature that the mother is having and the baby's temperature are going to be almost same. So it kind of feels like, okay, I'm in a safe zone. I'm still with my mother. Okay, that is what it understands. It understands that way.
So in a situation where you've been just bed there with no human contact, nothing,
yeah,
you would have control.
Absolutely. The social development and physical development are going to be compromised. And there's this case study that was done. I'll tell you a little about it. So there was this little baby was put in a dark room. It was given, it was fed at the right time, but it was completely dark. So they watched the baby for 6 months, and after 6 months, the baby died. Okay, even, the external cues like lighting, temperature, pressure, and, all these are going to determine the development of a baby. They're critically important. So you want to have your baby not just in the crib that it's placed in. You want to take your baby outside as well. You want to expose it towards the various environmental stimuli. So at this stage of time, right from neonatal stage through like 4 to 5 years of age, this is the time where the baby learns the maximum. Okay, if you're teaching 10 languages to the baby, he's going to understand that. He's going to learn that. Now, if you're going to teach the same 10 languages to someone who's 20 years old, maybe he can't learn that with that kind of, that fluency. So because brain development continues even after the baby is born up to 5 years of age. So this is a time where you have to, give the baby external cues. You have to expose him towards various external and environmental stimuli. Take him out to a garden. Show him the flowers. Show him the colors. Although he might not be able to see the colors. I mean, he might not be able to understand that this is red and this is. But the thing is, they can kind of catch the bright colors. So this is one external cue. So they kind of process all this information, and then they utilize this for their social and physical development. Okay, so that way, infant deprivation should not be done. That's the reason why. Okay, now we'll talk about child abuse. So after the infant stage, like neonatal stage, first 4 weeks of life, from 4 weeks, around about from 1 month through 12 months, like 1 year, that is infant stage. Now after infant stage, toddler stage, up to 3 years of age, up to 5 years of age, the children, and children like up to 12 years of age, we call them children, and after the adolescent period starts, right? Then teenagers, okay, all that. So child abuse, we'll talk about child abuse. So whenever you suspect that there is child abuse happening to that little kid, now this is the ethical aspect I'm talking about. I hope everyone makes a note of it, because you won't find it in first aid. So if the moment you suspect that there has been the child has been abused by his parents or guardians or whoever it is, the first thing that you're going to do is report to the Child Protection Services. The first thing that you should be doing is report to the Child Protection Services, local Child Protection Services, CPS. Okay, so how are you going to find, how are you going to diagnose or suspect that this child has been abused? Okay, so there can be physical abuse, there can be sexual abuse. So what is signs that you can see in physical abuse? Now, there's this child who's brought by their parents, supposedly, okay, and you see that the child is all bruised at various parts of his body, and which are at different stages of healing. So what information does it give you, roughly? Like, okay, this child, I mean, it's not the first time that this bruise has occurred. If the bruises are like in various stages of healing, there was this one bruise that he got like say 6 months ago. This bruise he might have gotten like 4 months ago. So every time he's been, charged with these bruises and all. And then you kind of try to examine the child. And the parents, usually what they do is they don't allow their kids to be examined alone. So what you'll do is you'll first ask the parents, like, I want to interview the child alone. Could you please excuse me? Then they'll confront you because obviously they're worried, like you're going to find out that the child has been abused. And how's the child when he's brought to you? He's like withdrawn. He doesn't make the eye contact. He's like looking somewhere else, or probably looking downstairs. Looking down. Okay, that's how he is. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, battered baby syndrome. Yeah, okay, that's close enough. We'll talk about it as well. Yeah. So you have this child with multiple bruises, and you got an X-ray done, and you find that there are like rib fractures, multiple bones being fractured, and they're in different stages of healing. So this gives you a general sense that the child has been abused, and he has been being abused for a long time. Okay, so right at the moment when you find that, okay, there's one more thing that's critically important. So when you suspect that the child has been abused, what you're going to do is you just have a look at his retina. Like you have to do a fundus examination. So like ma'am was talking, Amina ma'am, she's saying that about battered baby syndrome. So what happens is that these parents, they catch hold of the child like this, okay, within their two hands, and they shake them. That's called shaken baby syndrome or abusive head trauma. It was previously called as shaken baby syndrome, and now it's called as abusive head trauma. So in this violent shaking, they tend to actually fracture the ribs. That is one point. And because of this violent shaking, since the head size of the baby is much, much more compared to their body surface area. Now, why this happens? The head grows faster than the body. Okay, the child, he actually grows, the adult head size by around 2 years of age. By 2 or 3 years of age, he has grown to his adult head size. Okay, so it grows faster than the rest of the body. But the brain, it's still in the development phase. Okay, now you have the head so big, and you have a small brain in that. So it's floating around in the cerebrospinal fluid within the brain box. Okay, now when you're shaking it, there's this degree of freedom wherein the brain can actually hit around the borders of the skull box. Okay, so what this does is it actually causes trauma to the brain as well. These are called coup and counter coup kind of accidents. All right, so there's coup, that is if the brain hits on the forward surface of the brain box, that is called coup, and because of the repulsion, because of the ricochet, it again goes and hits back onto the posterior surface. That's the counter coup. Okay. So the coup and counter coup will result in, there's these bridging veins between the dural venous sinuses and the scalp. So these tend to actually break. So because of that, the child can have subdural hematomas. So this is one diagnostic sign that which will give you an information so that you can suspect that yes, the child had been abused. Okay, so subdural hematomas and retinal hemorrhages, like I told you, that this children, they have to undergo fundus examination as well. So you'll find micro retinal hemorrhages because of the violent shaking. So this shaken baby syndrome and abusive head trauma and fractures in multiple stages of healing and bruises in multiple stages of healing, burn marks on the buttocks maybe, and different parts of the body. All this information, it gives you a clue that probably the child has been abused physically. So whenever you suspect that the child has been abused physically, so the first thing you do is take the child into custody. So this is an ethical question. So they'll give you all that history about all this stuff that I just talked about, and then what you're going to get in the options is they'll give you like, what are you going to do? Are you going to ask the parents to leave the room? Are you going to persuade and confront the parents that this should not be done and it's wrong on their part and it's terrible to do this to the baby? Are you going to do that? The third option would be take the child into custody and then proceed on to talk to the ethics committee. The fourth would be get a court order. The fifth option would be like take the child, leave the room immediately. Sixth would be call the child protection services. So if these are the options, the first thing that you're going to do is call the local child protection services. If that is not there in the options, the second thing that you would do is take the child, leave the room. Take the child and leave the room. No matter what they yell, the parents, they're yelling, like, what are you going to do with my child? It doesn't matter. Now, the other thing is, it need not be necessarily proved that the child had been abused. Even with the suspicion that the child might have been abused, you can do all this thing. You don't have to prove it, okay? Yeah. There's also this option that first prove that the child had been abused, and then go on to call the local child protection services. So that is never the option. And another option that's gonna never be the answer is call to the, meet the ethics committee of the hospital, or call a lawyer and take necessary help. No, you're the physician, you're going to decide everything. You're not gonna consult a psychiatrist. These are never gonna be the answers, okay, for any ethical question. Just bear that in mind. And who is probably the abuser in child abuse? Most commonly, it's the mother who is the abuser in these child abuse situations. And sexual abuse, usually around 9 to 12 years. Most commonly, females are affected for sexual abuse. Okay, and most commonly, the abuser is a known male person, and who is within the family. The family doesn't necessarily mean to be a sibling or his father, some uncle or somebody of that sort. Okay, that is physical abuse and sexual abuse. Okay. Now, we'll talk about child neglect. So, like I told about child abuse, even if you suspect that there has been child neglect, even that is reportable. You have to call up to the local child protection services and tell them that there's a probable neglect of the child. Now, how do you diagnose? I mean, how do you suspect that there has been neglect towards the child? There's poor hygiene. There's malnutrition. The child is like totally withdrawn. He doesn't make eye contact. He's a loafer. He's not tall for his age. He's underweight basically. So all this kind of give you an impression that the child probably has been neglected. Okay. Now, vulnerable child syndrome. Now, there's this child who has been through a severe trauma, maybe some grave infection, and he's been hospitalized for like 2-3 months in the ICU, and he's coming out of it. Okay, he came out of it, now he's good, he's all better. Now the parents are so anxious that they all the time kind of tend to feel that their child is vulnerable towards contracting the disease. They all the time come to you and say like, my child is not growing, there's something wrong with it. They're so anxious about it. So what this happens is like, they tend to, misuse and misutilize the health services. Actually, the child might grow. It might take a little time for him to recover. Okay, so this is vulnerable child syndrome. Okay, now we'll talk about some really important stuff. Now we'll talk about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Now the name itself gives you a general sense of what it is. Now attention deficit, these children, they usually have this limited attention span. They're always like running around, they're pushing everything, they're throwing everything, they're beating up children, other children. Okay, they interrupt when you're talking. Okay, they don't listen to the whole conversation. You're talking to them, you're just telling them not to do this, and just in the middle of what you're talking, start talking, and they have this weird kind of tics sometimes. Not all those children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder will have motor tics, but they kind of blink their eyes, or they kind of spit on your face, or not necessarily on your face, but they kind of spit. They just have this irresistible thought that they should be spitting, and they should be running around. They're always mischievous, breaking everything. Okay, they're these kind of children. Okay, so there's limited attention span. They can't really focus. So, and the most important thing to diagnose for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is all the signs and symptoms that I just told you, they should be occurring in multiple settings. So they're the same thing in school, at the play, okay, at the kindergarten, and back at home as well. Okay, they're always mischievous. Okay, they can't control themselves. That is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Usually, this is diagnosed before 12 years of age. Okay, so this attention deficit hyperactivity disorder can proceed on to be with these children even when they grow, like some around 20-25 years age as well. Okay, so how are you going to treat these children? The first thing that you'll do is prescribe them methylphenidate. Methylphenidate, otherwise amphetamine. It's an amphetamine, right? Okay, so the drug of choice would be methylphenidate, amphetamine, atomoxetine, clonidine. Okay, you have a question?
Yeah, is that the first thing you do?
That's the first
Would you
one.
like counsel them or something first?
Excuse me?
Wouldn't you counsel them or something first, or just go ahead and give medications?
Yeah, actually there are the two modalities. You are going to resolve the core symptoms, and parallel to that, you're going to advise family therapy and cognitive and behavioral therapy to the child. If the child is less than 6 years of age, you would rather recommend family therapy. So you'd advise what kind of things, what kind of precautions the family must be taking, and the kind of care the family must be taking to its child. And if it is like above 10 years of age, you can well understand, you can talk to the child, and you can proceed on with behavioral and cognitive therapies. So, but the most important thing in order to bring these symptoms down would be medical treatment, drugs, which is methylphenidate, clonidine, guanfacine, and this atomoxetine. Now, I'm sure at least one of you must have had this question in your mind that, okay, amphetamines or psychostimulants, and this child here is already hyperactive. I mean, he's already like over the roof. Now, what kind of sense does it make if you're giving things which are going to drive him more crazy? Okay, he's already crazy, and you're giving drugs that will drive him more crazy. How does that make sense? Okay, so the logic and reason behind this is, now when you're giving methylphenidate, what it's going to do is, it's an amphetamine. What's the mode of action of amphetamine? Basically, it's going to drive all that presynaptic vesicles containing norepinephrine into the synapse, all right? So it's actually draining all that norepinephrine down into the synapse. Okay, there's no more norepinephrine that's going to come. So that is one mode of action. The second thing, that the reason behind why we prescribe methylphenidate is because now this guy who's active, like he's hyperactive, and you're giving a drug that is a psychostimulant, and he becomes much more overactive, and he gets exhausted. So in a little while of time, like say 10-15 minutes, he's like completely overwhelmed because of this hyperactivity, and he completely loses energy. Okay, his energy is all absorbed. Okay, now he's completely exhausted. What he does is he's just relax and sleep. So that is the logic behind giving methylphenidate or psychostimulants to treat attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Okay. Now, what are the side effects of this methylphenidate or the treatment, and how quick is it going to act? Now, there's this question. Now, there's this child who you have diagnosed from the question stem that he has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and he's been prescribed the best possible drug, which is methylphenidate. Now, the question is, how long is it going to take for the drug to act and resolve these core symptoms? The answer to the question would be immediately. So if you're starting the drug today, maybe in a day or two, the core symptoms resolve. Okay, so it's that effective. The drug management for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is so quick. So you're going to resolve those core symptoms. And parallel to that, what you're going to start is family therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. That's psychodynamic therapies, okay? So that is one thing. Now, what is side effects of these drugs? Okay, now I'm talking about drugs which are psychostimulants. So what can you expect? So this overdrive of this norepinephrine thing is so active, all right? So there's this one really important adverse effect of this medication is that the child will lose weight. Okay, he doesn't gain weight quickly because he's draining all his energy because of the hyperactivity. Okay, so how are we gonna overcome this problem? So what is best prescribed is you feed the child with nutritious food, and then after feeding the child, give the drug. Okay, that is one way where you can overcome this adverse effect. Okay, so feed the child, then give the drug. This should be the kind of approach towards dealing people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And then, what are the other adverse effects? Some children, like around 10-20% of the children, may develop motor tics, and sometimes there can be increased blood pressure and increased heart rate. And I assume you all understand that why? Because there's overdrive. Because of the amphetamine, because of the amphetamines, there could be an increase in blood pressure and heart rate. Although it's like just about in 10-20% of the children that you can find this, but it's always good to monitor their heart rate and blood pressure throughout the course of the treatment. All right. Now we'll talk about autism spectrum disorder. So the other day I was talking about this movie. I assume Archana might have seen that. This Rain Man. So if you've not seen this movie, I think this is one movie that you're definitely gonna watch. I would recommend it. It's like just when you feel like, you're stressed out with all your studies and books and you want to take some time out, go watch this movie. So Dustin Hoffman, he's done a phenomenal job in depicting this autism spectrum disorder. So what basically is autism spectrum disorder? So what is autistic child? Who is an autistic child? So these children, they have problems in making bonds, relationships. They not only have constructive problems in making bonds and relationships with people, even if they do kind of form a bonding between a friend or maybe a sibling or maybe his father, his parent, anybody. Okay, even if he does form a bond, he can't actually construct it further. It's just static. It's not dynamic. Okay. I just know you, you're my brother. Okay, that's cool, that's it. Okay, you're my brother, I love you, you're so connected to me. That's not gonna be with these children. Okay, usually this autism spectrum disorder is diagnosed about like 2 or 3 years of age. Now if I'll flip back a couple of slides, we will see what happens at 2 years of age. 2 years of age, social and cognitive, what are these? Okay, follows 2-step commands, power play, begins toilet training. At 3 years of age, imaginative play, knows age and gender. Okay, so these kids who are autistic, these kids, they don't actually have all these things. Okay, they don't have the social development, so they can't make relationships. Their social capabilities are like stagnant. They don't grow in that aspect. Okay, so these are autistic children. And if you watch this movie, this guy, Rain Man, who's Dustin Hoffman, playing he's alongside Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is playing his brother. Okay, he has been put in this custody. Okay, he's put in this kind of foster home, where he grows, Dustin Hoffman. So around 20-25 years later, Tom Cruise finds out that he has a brother and he's in custody after the death of his father. Is something wrong? Okay. So now what happens is these kids are sometimes they're presented with like God gifts, what we call God gifts. Okay, some kind of saving, something like they have their entire sensory, their sensory powers onto one particular thing. So they have this enormous and immense sensory perception about one thing. Like this guy in this Rain Man, if you throw a box of toothpicks onto the floor, right, just by looking at it, he can just tell you like how many toothpicks fell on the floor. Can we all do that? No, obviously not. We don't know how. I mean, there are plenty. We can't really count them, but they can really do. I mean, it's not magic in any sense, but they're gifted with such kind of savants. And they also go to this casino, and he knows like how many cards are there in the system, and what's the probability that each person might have got the cards, and he can exactly pinpointedly tell what cards, if I put, I would win the poker. Okay, so these are special gifts that they're presented with, artistic chops. These are no magical things. I mean, since their sensory perceptions and modalities are focused on only one thing, so they can use them to the maximum. Now, if you, in your case, in my case, we have our brain split into so many aspects. We have sensory cues taken in, we have motor cues taken in, we have tactile, gustatory, olfactory cues. We have all these cues, and we are basically we are dividing the labor of our brain towards various sensory modalities and motor modalities. But these kids, they have all their sensory focus on one thing. So that's the reason they're completely fabulous in one job, and they fail to do the rest of the jobs. Okay, now these kids not necessarily have to be mentally retarded. Okay, they have a kind of pretty normal IQ. Okay, so this is autistic spectrum disorder. Okay, so there's no medical treatment to treat autistic spectrum disorder, but what you can do is you can kind of maintain this rapport between patient and their family by doing this family therapy. Okay, that is one thing you can do for this. And another thing very interesting about autism spectrum disorder is they kind of tend to do the same thing over and over again. They like doing the same thing over and over again. Like if they decided to wake up like 4 o'clock in the morning for 20 years straight, every single day they're gonna wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So they love to do that. Like if there's one novel given to them, like say Sherlock Holmes, they read the same Sherlock Holmes novel like 10, 20 times in a month. I'm talking about in a month. They don't try to discover new things. They keep repeatedly doing the same thing, okay? And even in the motor aspects as well, like they keep doing the same thing. All the time. Okay, so, excuse me?
Tourette's or something.
I beg your pardon.
Tourette syndrome.
Tourette syndrome are different things. They're non-rhythmic. The difference between Tourette syndrome and in autism spectrum disorder is that they're non-rhythmic vocal and motor tics, whereas in autism spectrum, they're rhythmical. Like they keep doing at the same speed, the same intensity over and over again. Okay, they tend to brush their teeth for like 20 minutes. I mean, who not does that? Like 2 minutes, 5 minutes is over. Okay, they brush their teeth for 20 minutes. Why did they do that? Because they like doing the same thing over and over again. Okay, that is a general sense about autism spectrum disorder. Now, we'll talk about Rett syndrome. Now, yesterday we were talking about regression, right? Now, what is regression? Ego defense regression. Anybody from what we talked yesterday? Yes. They tend to go towards younger stages of development. Absolutely. The same thing happens in Rett syndrome. Rett syndrome is an X-linked dominant disorder. X-linked, okay. From X-linked dominant, I just got something in my mind. We'll just talk about it. Okay, X-linked dominant. So X-linked dominant disorders are most commonly seen in females. Okay, if they're X-linked recessive disorders, they're most commonly seen in males. Okay, X-linked dominant, even you have one X which is defective. The person is likely to develop the disease. Now, in females, how many X do you have? 2X. So they're highly prone towards acquiring an X-linked dominant disorder. Whereas in males, they still have one X and one Y. And just in case if they have the defective X, even they can have this thing. But usually, in X-linked dominant disorders, when the male acquires a defective gene in X, they usually tend to die in utero. They're not even born. So most of the X-linked dominant disorders, all of the X-linked dominant disorders, you kind of find them in females. Okay. So I just want you to orient yourself in a way that when you're studying a particular topic or subject, and when you come across things like this, just kind of think like, what are the other disorders which are X-linked dominant? Okay, it kind of it brushes up your memory so that you be in the subject all the time. You don't tend to forget things. Okay, there should always be an association, like when you're talking about Rett syndrome. So Rett syndrome obviously is X-linked dominant. So what are the other diseases which are also X-linked dominant? There's this Fragile X syndrome. I'm sure this must be dealt to you in. This must have been dealt with in biochemistry and molecular biology. Okay, in Fragile X syndrome, these are the guys who have like large heads with ears like that of Amir Khan and PK, something like this. Okay, they have this long ears, which are like, I hope you understood. And they have their jaws, which are protuberant jaws, and they have a testicular enlargement. Testicular enlargement. Okay, these are the features of Fragile X. They're mentally retarded guys. And I tend to remember it from one guy who is Darren Sammy. Darren Sammy. He's a West Indian cricketer. He kind of looks like that. If you, yeah, his ears, his face, his jaw, everything looks like that. So just a kind of thing so that you can remember. So when you talk about Fragile X, just remember Darren Sammy. Okay, that's how he looks. Because these are the features that will be given to you in the question. Okay. So there's Fragile X syndrome, which is X-linked dominant. And then there's Alport syndrome. Alport syndrome. Now, what is Alport syndrome? Anybody? Can see, can pee, can't hear a beat. Mnemonic. Okay. So Alport syndrome is basically a collagen defect disorder. The type 4 collagen is a defect. Type 4 collagen is a defect, and that has its effect on the lens. These guys tend to have dislocated lens. There's a problem hearing. This problem in hearing, lens, and the type 4 collagen present in the basement membrane of glomerulus. Okay, so that results in nephrotic syndrome. Okay, so just kind of brushing you up. I mean, this is not actually related, but just when I talking about this X-linked dominant, Alport syndrome, I don't think so. Alport syndrome, you can remember it like can see, can't hear a B, can pee. Okay, Alport syndrome, Rett syndrome, Fragile X syndrome, and vitamin D resistant rickets, otherwise called as the hypophosphatemic rickets. Hypophosphatemic rickets. I want you to make a little note about these 4 things right beside Rett syndrome, so because these are only 4 disorders which you will find in X-linked disorders. Okay? So Rett syndrome, Fragile X syndrome, Alport syndrome, and vitamin D resistant rickets. Because sometimes the question is like, they'll give out features of Rett syndrome, and they would say the kind of heritability that this disease, so you diagnose from the signs and symptoms that this is Rett syndrome, the kind of heritability that you'll see in this disease is most likely seen in which other disease, and the options would be. So trying to correlate like that. Okay, vitamin D resistant rickets here, the parathormone action on the kidneys is resistant, because of which the 24 hydroxy cholecalciferol is not converted into 125 dihydroxy cholecalciferol, which is the active form of vitamin D, as a result of which the loss of phosphate and there's also lots of calcium. That's the reason why it's otherwise called as hypophosphatemic rickets. This is an old name, VRR, vitamin D resistant rickets. Now it's called as hypophosphatemic rickets. You have a question now? You have a question?
Rett syndrome, what are the physical signs?
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Just because I was talking about X-linked dominant, I skipped that part and came here. Okay. So what happens in Rett syndrome is the child usually regresses. Here, usually it's female, so the girl regresses. So we were talking about regression yesterday. That is moving on towards earlier stages of development. So there's this 3-year-old girl who's brought to the physician by her mother who says that previously my daughter used to walk. She used to run. All that motor activities were present. Her milestones were normal until 3 years of age. But at 6 months, she's not able to walk. She's not even crawling. She can't sit even. Even if she has to sit, she can take the support of her hand. Okay, this is what the presentation is more likely to be. Okay, they kind of regress towards the early stages of development. That is Rett syndrome. So this is not any organic cause, like Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Even in that syndrome, you tend to have a similar kind of presentation, but that's an organic disease where there's a defect in dystrophin gene product. And the difference, how you're going to, differentiate between Rett syndrome and Duchenne muscular dystrophy, or say Becker's dystrophy, is that in Rett syndrome there's normal development until a certain period of time, a certain age, say around about like 3 years. Until 3 years, the girl develops normally. After that, because of some stressful situation in her life, she regresses back to the early stages of development. That is Rett syndrome. There's no organic disorder. It's not organic disorder, okay? But in this Becker's dystrophy or Duchenne muscular dystrophy, what happens is right from childhood, he lacks this dystrophy gene product as a result of it. We have this Gogur's sign. That is, he makes use of his hands in order to he'll push his knees. Like he'll push his knees and then try to stand up. And there's pseudo hypertrophy of the calf muscles. So these are the differentiating features of Duchenne and Becker's muscular dystrophy with Rett syndrome. Okay. So that is Rett syndrome, X-linked dominant disorder, usually diagnosed at 3 years of age. Excuse me?
Can you tell the features of that?
Rett syndrome. Rett syndrome, normal development until 3 years of age or 4 years of age, then regresses towards earlier stages of development. Like previously, she used to walk. She used to, run. Now she can't walk. She can't run. She uses her hands in order to sit. So, like she is again like what she used to be like at maybe 1 year of age or 6 months of age. So that's the only thing that happens.
Will that continue the whole life in some situations?
But basically, as long as the stress continues. So we have to address the underlying conflict that is causing all the symptoms and try to resolve them. That is Rett syndrome. And another differential for Rett syndrome would be lead poisoning. Rett syndrome and lead poisoning. Even in lead poisoning, you'll have regression symptoms. Okay? And lead poisoning tend to cause permanent damage. Damage the brain. So before diagnosing the child to have Rett syndrome, you always want to make sure to have a blood lead. I want to tell you one thing. Usually the psychiatric diagnoses or like ruling out other organic causes, and then finally, when you found nothing, then you diagnose him to be having the psychiatric illness, because there are not many tools so that we can absolutely diagnose a psychiatric condition. So before you could you label this kid with a psychiatric diagnosis, it's always better to rule out possible organic causes which can present likewise. Okay, so rule out all the organic causes. You found nothing, then label him with psychiatric diagnosis. That's a general principle. Okay, so that is about Rett syndrome. Okay, now we'll talk about conduct disorder and antisocial personality. So what happens here is, some books isn't right, absolutely. Right. Conduct disorder. Now, these two disorders, conduct disorder and antisocial personality, they're both basically the same thing. It's just the age limit that's going to change the name. So if you find signs and symptoms such as there's this child who's like really, really aggressive, who likes burning things, he kills animals, he's like totally antisocial, I mean, which is conflicting with the interests and with the basic rights of others. He doesn't care about that. Okay, he kind of he twists the necks of these chicken, this tiny little chicken, and he loves hitting the worms. He want to kill all that. He sets up fires. He does this petty little thefts from the shops. He picks things from the shops. He teases. All that thing which you'll characterize to be a bad person will be seen in a person having conduct disorder. Okay, so if all the symptoms you find in a person who is like below 18 years of age, that you'll label him as a conduct disorder. And if it's above 18 years of age, the same thing, the same set of signs and symptoms, you just change the name and you'll label him as antisocial personality. Okay, so these are the people who are more likely to become terrorists and set up fires on the buses and do all sorts of, they vandalize things. Okay, they kind of create this nuisance and all that stuff. So that is conduct disorder and antisocial personality. 18 years. So conduct disorder before 18 years of age. After 18 years, right from his 18th birthday, he is labeled to have antisocial personality disorder. Okay. Now we'll talk about oppositional defiant disorder. So it's more or less similar to that of conduct disorder, but the only difference is that here, these people having oppositional defiant disorder, they don't do these terrible things. They only restrict themselves towards, arguing with people of higher hierarchy. So they kind of, the children who are basically disobedient. They argue with their parents, they argue with the teachers, they don't listen to them. Okay, if they're ordered to do something, they would not do it. So they're opposing people of the higher hierarchy, and they're defying their rules. So they don't want to go by the rules. If I'm the elder and I'm saying, kid, you're not supposed to do that, you have to walk in straight line, you're not supposed to cross the line. But he's definitely going to do that. When you order them to do something, they're going to definitely oppose you and do the opposite of what you're asking for. Okay, that's the kind of behavior these people with oppositional defiant disorder they present with. Okay, now we'll talk about separation anxiety disorder. Now, what did I say about separation anxiety when we're talking about milestones? It's common, like from 9 months to 2 years of age. So these guys who are like some around 7 to 9 years of age, they still have the same kind of separation anxiety that a 2-year child has with his parents. So these are the kids who have difficulty. Excuse me, somebody not on mute. Okay, so these are the guys who find it difficult, to go out in the night times, go to the parties. They just don't do it because they can't imagine themselves without their parents. Wherever they go, they want their parents to be with them. Okay, they're basically restricted to its home. They spend most of the time home playing and talking with their mom, dad. Okay, they don't love making friends or going to. I mean, they do love making friends. They want to have that social relationship with others. But the thing is, we'll do all the stuff, we'll play, we'll run around, we'll do everything, but I need my parents right by my side. So that is separation anxiety disorder. Okay, we'll talk about what Tourette syndrome. So Tourette syndrome, these are non-rhythmic stereotyped movements, motor or vocal. Okay, that is La Tourette syndrome. So the kind of make things like this, I'll just try to demonstrate you what kind of motor tics they have. They'll just be doing like this. When they're talking, they're raising their eyebrows all the time when they're talking. I mean, it's hard for me to talk and do it simultaneously, but they have that, you know, that is one kind of motor tic. Otherwise, they do like this, like every time, every now and then. I mean, it's involuntary. They know that it's disturbing. They have this in their mind that it's disturbing, but they yet can't actually, you know, control it. It just happens by its own way, and it happens at frequent intervals. It keeps happening at frequent intervals. Now, if you guys might have seen Sourav Ganguly, who's a cricketer, captain of the Indian cricket team. So he has this habit of blinking the eyes. When he's talking, he keeps blinking the eyes over and over, like constantly he keeps blinking. So I can't say that is La Tourette syndrome, but that kind of tics, motor tics, these people have, La Tourette syndrome. Okay, so how do you deal with this La Tourette syndrome? So there's nothing you can do about how to eliminate the disorder, but you can actually bring the motor tics down. You can control the motor tics. Now, basically, what's the mechanism of motor activity? There's this frontal cortex, which will plan and execute the motor activity. And okay, so basically, dopamine is the major neurotransmitter in your frontal cortex, right? So you want to have drugs that can, you know, decrease that thing. Okay, what are the drugs which will decrease dopamine in your brain? We're talking about antipsychotics, aren't we? They're all dopamine blockers, right? So what you give them is like first generation hypertensive antipsychotics like Pimozide, like flufenazine. Flufenazine is long acting, it's hypertensive, first generation antipsychotic. And where else is Pimozide used? Anybody? Pimozide? There's just one disorder where you use Pimozide. Anybody? Pimozide. Ekbom's disease. Restless leg syndrome. Ekbom's disease. Okay? So, flufenazine, Pimozide, and this is how you control motor tics by, you know, decreasing the dopamine levels there. There's one more modality wherein you can cut down this motor tics. Now, basically, the information is sent from the brain to the muscles, right? Eventually muscles. What's the neurotransmitter that is acting on the muscle at the neuromuscular junction? Acetylcholine. So if you can just block that, that's cool. So give them anticholinergics, give them tetrabenazine, or benztropine, anticholinergic.
How will they walk around and be active?
Huh?
How will they walk around and be active?
Yeah, absolutely. No, the beauty of the drug is drugs act on areas where there's hyperactivity. Okay, so when you're giving an anticholinergic, it will definitely go concentrate and try to occupy those receptors which are hyperactive. Okay, so if the motor tics going on within the face, so the drug acts on that particular thing. Of course, there'll be a little bit of, you know, decreased movements in the rest of the body, but that's not going to affect, because that's how we are going to tighten the dosage so that it won't affect the rest of the body and it'll specifically act on that. So that is titration of the dose, okay? What?
Do we know the cause of the person or is
We actually don't. We don't know the cause for La Tourette syndrome, okay? We don't know causes for most psychiatric disorders. It's just theory that probably this. Now, like I'm saying, why La Tourette syndrome is happening is because of increased activity. Because based on the drug that is acting, you can come to a conclusion that probably It's the dopamine levels that are hiked up with the spiking in the frontal cortex. That is because by giving an antipsychotic, these motor tics are coming down. So that's the kind of interpretation and inference we draw. Okay, and there's also something called as coprolalia. Copro is bad. Okay, coprophagia, eating one's own excreta that rabbits do, right? So that is coprophagia. So coprolalia is speech, speaking bad language, and actions. Bad, these kids who have Tourette syndrome, there's some 10% of not so frequent. It's really rare. But it does happen in some around 10% of the people that they have this coprolalia. They tend to speak all bad language, obnoxious language, which is not like socially acceptable. Okay, it's hard for them to actually control it. They just say out those words, even without knowing the meaning sometimes. They must have acquired it somewhere from, and then they just literally speak it out. And they do this non-rhythmic pelvic thrusts, okay, in order to, kind of depict some kind of sexual activity. And that kind of things happen in a lot of Tourette syndrome. They keep thrusting their pelvises, okay? So that is a lot of Tourette syndrome. We'll talk about amnesia. So what is amnesia? Amnesia is basically loss of memory. Okay, now what is dementia? If amnesia is loss of memory, what is dementia? Dementia is also loss of memory, actually, but there's a slight difference, actually. How is amnesia differing from dementia? So these are the things that you have to have at the back of your mind. Whenever you're talking about a particular concept, you need to know, like, how is it different from the other? Because the options are going to be confusing you in this way. So he'll give you all the features of amnesia, and he'll give you amnesia and dementia side by side. Now you don't know which one to pick. So you need to know what subtle differences are there between the diagnosis of an amnesia and diagnosis of dementia. So amnesia is like loss of memory, wherein there's complete vacuum. Okay. Now, in a general sense, I'll talk about it. Now, this is your whole part of memory. Let's suppose this is your memory. Okay, like you were born in 1990 and this is 2017. Now, in amnesia, you have there's partial loss of memory, and it's like a vacuum. There's amnesia for this period. You know nothing about what happened between, say, 2000 and 2010. You know nothing between this period. Where you were between 2000 and 2010, what you were doing. Okay, like if I give you an example, if you people have watched this movie called Jab Tak Hai Jaan. So in that, Shah Rukh Khan, he undergoes an accident. He has this retrograde amnesia for 10 years. Okay, it's something. So in those 10 years, what he did, he absolutely has forgotten everything, every part of it. Okay, that is complete vacuum. It's like a black window wherein you know nothing about what has happened in that period of time. That is amnesia. So it can be retrograde amnesia, it can be anterograde amnesia. If it's a retrograde amnesia, so they tend to forget things which has happened in the past. And anterograde amnesia, they tend to not acquire new memories that are forming from today. Now, if I am subjected to some trauma to my brain, and if I have landed up in anterograde amnesia, now down the line, like after 2 or 3 days, if you ask me, like, what were you wearing 2 days ago? What kind of food did you have? Where were you? I can't recall that. That is anterograde. I'm unable to form new memories. Okay, that is anterograde amnesia. And a good example for this is this movie, Ghazini. If you people have watched it, so here, every 15 minutes, he kind of forgets everything what he has done in the past 15 minutes. So he keeps a reminder to himself, like where he should be going, what he should be doing. He only has flashes of memory from the past. Okay, he doesn't know like what kind of memory he has built up in those 15 minutes, and all the time he has to recall from some kind of informative things. Okay, that is anterograde amnesia, retrograde amnesia. So that is all about it. Now, what is dissociative amnesia? Like we were talking yesterday about dissociation as an ego defense, we'll talk about what is dissociation amnesia, dissociation identity disorder, and all that stuff today. So dissociation is an ego defense, it's like a symptom. Okay, and what happens in dissociative amnesia is these people, they dissociate from their own memory, cognition, and mode of behavior and they acquire a new person within themselves. Now, if I am Dr. Rasik, now, if I have this dissociative amnesia, now after maybe like some 5 or 10 hours later, if you'll ask me, hi, Dr. Rasik, who are you talking to? I'm not Dr. Rasik. I am so-and-so. I'm Vinod. Hi, I'm Vinod. I am a techie. I work here. That's a kind of memory. I mean, he builds up all these memories from a different person who he might have met, or he might have heard about, or he might have read about in some paper or somewhere. Basically, we don't know what's the source from where he develops this identity. He picks up a new name, a new identity, some new place. He'll say, this is my home. He'll create everything new. I mean, just by talking to the person, you won't be able to actually find out if he really is the same person you talked 10 hours ago. So that is dissociative amnesia. He forgets everything that has happened like 10 hours ago, and he's a completely new person. And again, after another 10 hours ago, when he comes back to being the first person, he doesn't know what has happened in those 10 hours. Okay, that is dissociative amnesia. Now, again, the same example, Gajini will give you a pretty good example of what is dissociative amnesia and what is dissociative fugue. Just give me a moment, please. Yes. Now, what is dissociative fugue? Now, now I'm here and I wake up somewhere else, maybe in Delhi, tomorrow in the morning. I don't know how I got there. I really don't know like who brought me here, what happened. All that I can recollect is yesterday I was in Hyderabad. Something dizzy happened to me, and when I woke up and I'm here. But in this period of time, he's actually dissociating from his own self, acquiring a new identity, and does things which he likes. Maybe that personality wanted to go to Delhi for some other reason. So he's landed up there. Now that identity is gone. He's back to being his own self, and he doesn't know how he got there. So that is dissociative fugue. Okay. So again, same thing in Gajini. What happens is he not exactly in Gajini, in this movie Aparichat again. Now this Ramu guy, he'll tell to the doctor, there's something weird happening with me. I was there at my house, and later when I woke up, I'm in this cave where all boats are there, and I don't know how I got there. So that is the kind of thing what basically explains dissociative fugue. Now, now, all this put together is dissociative identity disorder. So using ego defenses when presented with stress is the kind of ego defense the patient uses. And dissociative amnesia is a component of what is happening with this person. Dissociative fugue is another component of what is happening with this person. And persons with all these symptoms can be able to have dissociative identity disorder, which was previously called multiple personality disorder. So there was this study done, like how many people exist with multiple personality disorder. And it was found that there's a person in Austria who used to live back in 1935, I suppose. And it was 19? I think he's going to take 48. 74. 74 different personalities living in the same person. Okay. That is like, I don't know what to say about it. It's hard to deal with such patients, it seems. He comes to be with his family. He has some 7-8 families actually, because every time he turns up into a new person, he used to go marry new people, have kids with them, reside in a new place, and later turn into another personality, travel somewhere else. start up a family there. So he had some 8-9 families, and he had some 74 personalities and seats. Just for a little information, so that you're back in the topic. Now, now we'll talk about depersonalization and derealization disorder. So it is more or less same to that of dissociative identity disorder, but the thing is here in depersonalization, he doesn't change into a different person. Rather, he would think, he imagines as if a particular event has happened right in front of his eyes. He is a part of that incident, but he feels as if he has been a person who was not involved in that incident, and he has seen with such detail. Okay, I'll tell you an example of this. Now, there's this person who met with a car accident. Now, when you'll ask him, he'll tell you, doctor, I was in this accident. Okay, I felt like as if I was standing on the pavement and looking all that happened. I could see everything. I was riding at around like 80 kilometers per hour. There's this guy who was recklessly driving from the front. And right when I crashed into that vehicle, I saw that these specks of glass blew away. I could see every single thing. They're piercing in my eye and my face. The airbag is coming in. And then I went and crashed to the dashboard. And he'll tell you in every particular detail. When something happens in just a fraction of a second, how much can you remember? Maybe hardly. You might say, yeah, I had a crash. The most likely thing I would remember is maybe I hit the dashboard. That's all that you can say about it. But when you have this depersonalization, it's an out-of-the-body experience. So they're out of their own body and watching flying from the sky. They're somewhere on the pavement or on the top of a tree or on the top of a building. Or they might sometimes say, I'm flying. I'm in the air, and I can see everything happening in such a minute detail. So that is depersonalization, okay? And how about derealization disorder? So here, the same thing, the same set of thing. Instead of being an out-of-a-body experience, in derealization disorder, what these people have is out-of-the-environment feeling, okay? Here in depersonalization, they have this feeling that they're out of their body and watching everything. In derealization disorder, they're out of this whole environment. There's nothing here. They're not in this true real world. Okay, now if you've watched Superman, there's this conversation happening between Superman and Cal, the commander-in-chief. So they're in this, at the background, you'll see that there's these big machines which have tridents inserted into the earth, and there are these skulls coming up, and basically this guy, the Superman, our hero, he is drowning in all that, that skulls. He actually literally is drowning. He dreams of all that, right? So that is a kind of general sense about what derealization disorder. They're in a completely different environment. May not be in this world. Maybe they're in some other world. Other world doesn't really mean other realm, maybe Pluto, Mars. Not that in that sense. If an incident occurred in maybe Hyderabad in this house, in this setting, he would rather say, I was in a jungle with lions and tigers and all that. And it's an out of the environment feeling. That is derealization disorder. Okay? I hope you're all with me. How are you? Right. Remo, right? Okay. Yeah, Bulbula is one thing, right? Okay. Now we'll talk about Korsakoff syndrome. Korsakoff syndrome. So what is Korsakoff syndrome? So in Korsakoff syndrome, that's Wernicke's and Korsakoff syndrome. Can anyone tell me about how one acquires this Korsakoff syndrome? Time and deficiency, absolutely. And more information regarding that? What else do you know about it? It's a neurological. Yeah, right, very, very right. Nice. The people, chronic alcoholism, absolutely. That is really important, right? Okay, so Wernicke's, yeah, absolutely. So there's this person who's a chronic alcoholic. So chronic alcoholics have decreased appetite. So when they're not consuming food, they're absolutely lacking vitamins, which are really, really important for, various physiological actions, and out of which thiamine is going to be majorly affected. So these chronic alcoholics have a deficiency of thiamine, vitamin B1. So because of this deficiency of vitamin B1, what happens is the glucose, it can't enter into your brain cells. So what are required for glucose transport is you require sodium-dependent glucose transport, okay, SGLT1 for the brain and RBCs, okay? So you require sodium, you require glucose, you require potassium, because if all the sodium is going in, you need to have that sodium-potassium pump so that all that sodium is pumped out, and it only happens when you have enough potassium, all right? So sodium-potassium pump, so you require sodium, you require potassium, and you require what? B1, okay? For the transport of glucose, you require sodium, potassium, and B1, thiamine, vitamin B1, okay? It's critically important for the various TCA cycle activities. Now, where's the thiamine used? I guess your biochemistry class is done, right? Yeah, so Archana is going to tell me where all B1 is used. And she's going to tell me one, and this guy here is going to tell me one. The edge, absolutely. Alpha ketoglutarate, the microproteins.
Grantian amino acid.
Transfetolase, branch chain amino acid, BCK. Okay? So whenever you're talking about a particular disease, just have like quick review about, okay, what all we know about B1? Because now we're talking about Wernicke's-Scott syndrome. Let's give you a general system, right? So basically these two used for TCA cycle. This one, of course, prior to TCA cycle. This is a TCA cycle. This is an HMP shunt, right? And this for amino acid metabolism, right? Okay. So this is the reason, since B1 is critically important for TCA cycle, you need to have vitamin B1. Otherwise, since brain completely relies on glucose, and if glucose can't be metabolized, you get this syndrome called as Wernicke's-Korsakoff syndrome. So what happens in Wernicke's? In Wernicke's, there are three things. Anyone? Ataxia, internuclear ophthalmoplegia, confusion. Talking about the brain, right? Okay, so Wernicke's syndrome, ataxia, internuclear ophthalmoplegia, and confusion. These are the three things that you'll have in Wernicke's syndrome. Okay. I really wanted to talk more about this, but probably we'll cover that in the urology section. We'll talk more about Korsakoff syndrome today. Korsakoff syndrome. So apart from Wernicke's, you need to have Wernicke's before you get diagnosed to have him to have Korsakoff. So apart from Wernicke's, the most important is confabulation. If you have confabulation along with Wernicke's, you can diagnose him as Korsakoff, have to be having Korsakoff syndrome. So what is confabulation basically? So confabulation is like bridging the memories by making up stories. Now these guys, they're confused, they have this internuclear ophthalmoplegia, and they're ataxic, and they actually have lost this short memory about what happened from the day they started drinking, binge drinking, and today in the hospital. So they have only bits and pieces of information from their memory of as to what has happened to them. Okay, so now what they're going to do is they're trying to act smart. They're going to play smart now. When you ask him like what happened from the day you started binge drinking and today, then he'll say, yes, we are a group of friends. We started drinking and we were having stash and weed and all that. And he'll be telling you all the story. And at a particular point of time, he forgets everything. He doesn't remember from that point. From that one, he would say, and then my friend came in with an ice cream, and we all had ice cream. And if you ask him the flavor, like what ice cream did you have? He would say, actually, it was not ice cream. I think it was lychee and strawberries. Okay, he's actually trying to make up stories. It's not real. Okay, that is confabulation. They try to make up stories in order to bridge this event and this event, because they have this vacuum in between two memories that they have. Okay, from what happened on the day they started binge drinking and today in the hospital. Today in the hospital, he knows, okay, I woke up and I saw this nurse coming up with syringe. He knows from that part. What happened yesterday in the night, the day before, he doesn't know. Although he was conscious when he was brought into the hospital. He was put this nasogastric tube, sucked all that remaining portion of the alcohol from his body, from his stomach basically. He was done a gastric lavage. He was all conscious, but he didn't make that as a memory. So that lapses of memory he'll cover by confabulating. Okay, that is confabulation. That is Korsakoff syndrome. And basically, what is damaged because of vitamin D deficiency is your mammillary bodies. So in Wernicke's-Korsakoff syndrome, the part of the brain that is damaged is mammillary body. So I put this picture up for you because I just want to tell you one thing, that every time you're reading, especially in the neurology section, when you're studying about a particular part of the brain, you want to know where it's located. Because in the question, what he'll say is, he'll give you all the scenarios of a Wernicke's or Korsakoff syndrome, and he'll say, based on the diagnosis, the part of the brain that is most likely damaged is located on which of the following labeled parts. That is going to be his question. He's not going to be simple to you and ask which of the following organs is damaged. He'll rather give you a section, maybe a coronal section or a sagittal section of a gross specimen or an MRI or a CT. And he'll label things from that section, and he'll ask you to find out like which of the possible organ that is damaged. Okay, so when you're talking about mammillary bodies, those are the mammillary bodies that are highlighted with the white arrows and with the blue arrow. So make sure that when you're studying, excuse me, I think the battery's on the lower side of this.
When is the charge? It's like the jam is weird story. No, I mean, she's like, which jam I have to charge? Oh, it's like the notification. So you want to make sure that you have a general sense of idea as to where each and every particular organ is located within the brain, each and every structure, and you want to know them in both coronal section and sagittal section, both in gross specimens and in MRIs. Okay, so the best way that you can do is Wikipedia. Just wiki them, okay? Oops. Okay. Now, like we were talking about this multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder. Okay, now what are the risk factors for people to develop this dissociative identity disorder? So people who have been sexually abused as a child, or who are like in post-traumatic stress disorder, or who have depression, and who are like have this substance abuse. Okay, these guys and people with borderline personality and somatoform disorders. We'll discuss each and every topic maybe tomorrow. Okay, we'll discuss all these things. What is post-traumatic stress disorder and depression? Probably today we'll talk about depression and substance abuse. Okay, and then. Okay. Now we'll talk about delirium. What is delirium? Delirium is acute confusional state. Okay. Mark my words. It's acute. It's acute. It's confusion. Acute confusional state. And it should be waxing and waning. I mean, you're in full consciousness and then you suddenly collapse. And then you come back into consciousness and then you collapse again. And it happens in short periods, in bursts. Okay, that's waxing and waning levels of acute confusional state. Okay, that is delirium. So what are the features that you'll probably find in delirium? There can be only confusion without any symptoms. Okay, there can be only this confusion without any other symptoms, or it can be associated with hallucinations. I mean, he'll start hallucinating. Usually, delirium is diagnosed in a hospital setup. Okay, now usually these patients are like substance abuse, like they're in the withdrawal phase, or they have OD'd with any psychostimulant. OD, do you understand? OD, overdosed. Okay, so these are the people who are usually diagnosed in a hospital setup. Okay, so they have this. If you ask them, they can only comprehend few things of what you're talking. They might answer you, and sometimes and if they do, they'll give you a little bit of answer, and then they drop back into their waning portion of their confusional state, and they collapse. And then again, they'll wake up and they don't know what you've asked. Okay, then again, you start with a new question, and they answer, and then they might not answer. It's like confusion. They don't know what you're asking, where they are, who you are, what you're asking. They can't comprehend that. Okay, that is delirium. So these patients, they lack decision-making capacity. Now, for example, if I'd say there's this person who's a chronic alcoholic who had binge drunk. He's brought to the hospital. He's delirious. He is in an acute confusional state with waxing and waning levels of consciousness. Okay, now when you ask him that, okay, now, hey, Mr. Smith, you are like, you have this problem. You need to stay in the hospital so that we can take care of you. He'll say, no, I'm fine. I want to go home. Leave me. Okay. When we'll talk about ethics, there is something called as decision-making capacity. So people who are having this capacity to decide for themselves love to take decisions for their own, even though if it's going to harm them. Okay, that is patient-first principle. But in situations wherein the patient lacks decision-making capacity, like in schizophrenia, like in delirium, okay, in such cases, you can actually restrain the patient and put him to the bed, strap him, or his hands are like you can strap him. You can detain him within the hospital. And after some period of time, when he is like back to his normal state, then you can ask questions. And if the patient says, I still want to go home, you can respect his decision because now he's in a sober state, and you can send him home. Okay. But when the patient lacks, any question which gives you an idea that the patient lacks decision-making capacity, you can take your own decision. You have to do good to the patient in a way that what is best for the patient, in his best interests. Okay. And there's diffuse slowing of EEG. We'll talk about EEGs in more detail when we talk about sleep physiology, but still I would like to comment a little about EEG. Basically, it's a device that will capture electrical signals that are firing within your brain. Okay, there are 4 kinds of waves: alpha, beta, theta, and delta waves. Okay, these are these 4 kinds of waves that you'll encounter in an EEG. EEG is encephalogram. Okay, so what happens when you see alpha waves, when you see beta waves, what are theta waves, and what are delta waves? So beta waves are low amplitude, high frequency waves. These are low amplitude, high frequency waves. Like when you're active, when you're responding to the external cues, all the stimuli, the weather, the light, the pressure. Okay, all these is, your body is receiving this external cue information and it's processing all the time. Your proprioception from your joint capsules, okay, your position in the visuospatial world, okay, your three-dimensional perception about reality and the world. All this information you're gathering all the time, every single second, you're processing them. So the brain is active when you're opening your eyes, when you have your eyes open. So beta waves are when you have your eyes open. Right when you close your eyes, you have cut down. You've cut down a few sensory cues. Okay, just by closing your eyes, you've shut down the visual perceptions, visual stimuli. Okay, so what happens is there will be slightly increase in amplitude and decrease in frequency. These are alpha waves. Just when you excuse me. So alpha waves slightly different from beta waves when you close your eyes. Okay. So beta waves, alpha waves, theta waves are seen in stage 1 of your sleep cycle. Theta waves seen in your stage 1 of your sleep. Okay, basically sleep has REM sleep, non-REM sleep. In the non-REM sleep, we have 3 phases: phase 1, phase 2, 3 and 4 clubbed together, and now they're only phase 3. Previously, there used to be stage 3 and stage 4. Now they've clubbed 3 and 4 together because most of the symptoms, most of the things that happen in 4 also occur in 3. So they've clubbed it and they've just made it into 1. In stage 1 sleep, we have theta waves. This is initial stage of sleep. You're just falling to sleep and you're easily arousable. Now you've just fallen to sleep, someone comes and says, hey, wake up. You suddenly startle up and you wake up, right? You're not in your deep sound sleep. Okay, that is theta waves that you see in stage 1 sleep, in the initial phases of your sleep. Okay. Now in stage 2 sleep, you encounter sleep spindles and K complexes. Sleep spindles and K complexes. Now, how are these waves? So, these are something like this. These are sleep spindles and K complexes. So, larger amplitude, lesser frequency. You see how much time it's taking for the next spindle to come? So there's a lot of time when compared to alpha waves and beta waves. So large amplitude, less frequency. That is sleep spindles and K complexes that you encounter in stage 2 sleep. Now this is a sleep wherein you've just dripped into that deep sleep. You just dripped into the deep sleep. Okay, and the deepest sleeps and the most comfortable zone where your whole of the body completely relaxes is stage 3 sleep. And in stage 3 sleep, you'll encounter the delta waves. So stage 3 of the non-REM sleep is otherwise called as the delta sleep. Okay? Any questions so far? Anyways, we'll talk about sleep physiology and what all happens in various stages of sleep. When we'll talk about sleep and its disorders, maybe on the last day. Okay? This is a general sense about sleep cycle. So, in delirium, you have this slow, diffuse slowing of the EEG. Okay, because like I said, the conscious levels are waxing and waning. Okay, so because of that, it's as if the patient is asleep. Okay, they're diffusely slowing. Frequency is decreasing, and the amplitude slowly goes up. So that is one thing that you'll encounter if you take an EEG of a person who is delirious. Now, one major cause of delirium, especially among the elderly, please excuse me, cough has been troubling me for 2 days. Okay, so elderly who are prescribed anticholinergics are more prone towards developing delirium. Now, why is that? Why is that so? Now, why people who will take anticholinergics are more prone towards developing delirium? Now, like I said, delirium is basically alternating. It's waxing and waning levels of consciousness, right? What are the side effects of anticholinergics? What do anticholinergics work on? Although we say it's an anticholinergic, so it should definitely act on what? M receptors. M receptors, because the M receptors are what are cholinergic receptors, right? Cholinergic receptors are 2 types, N type, M type. N is again of 2 types on the muscle and on the ganglia of the neurons. And M is of 3 types, which is M1, M2, M3. M1 is present in the brain, M2 is present in the heart, M3 is present in the glands and smooth muscles, okay? So you all must be knowing this, right? Apart from N receptors, it also acts on H1 receptors. So it's anti-N and anti-H1 and in some cases, serotonin and alpha-1 sometimes. It depends upon what drug you're using. So basically, if they're giving you anticholinergics, don't just think in terms of M receptors. So anticholinergics, they are like this genotype. They work on multiple receptors. Okay, they act on M receptors, H1 receptors, serotonin receptors, alpha-1 receptors, peptides. So what if the anticholinergic that you're using is acting on H1? So where is H1 present? H1 is present in the brain. Where exactly in the brain? Anybody? Reticular activating system. So what is reticular activating system? Where is it present? In the brainstem. So what does it do? It keeps you conscious. It keeps you awake. Okay? So whenever histamine acts on H1, you are awake. If you block H1, you tend to fall asleep. Make sense? Everybody? Okay? Right. Now I said the anticholinergics also have anti-H1 activity. Now if they're anti-H1, they're blocking histamine to act on H1 to keep the person awake. So automatically the patient falls asleep. So what did I say about delirium? There's this alternating consciousness. Now why is this alternating consciousness? Now the anticholinergic is making the patient sleep, but there is histamine as well, right? It's trying to act on H1 to keep the patient awake. These are competing. There's a competition between these two. So they're waxing and waning levels of consciousness. So that is delirium. So this happens especially in the elderly. Okay? So elderly patients, you must anticholinergics are contraindicated among elderly. So you want to make sure that in prescription, if there is some anticholinergic, try to avoid it. So there's this question, there's this 80-year-old guy who's perfectly normal till yesterday, okay? Except for his bladder problems, okay? He was urinating much. So this physician, he has given him, say, darifenacin or sulfasenacin, or say flavoxate or oxybutynin or tolterodine. All these are anticholinergics that act on the bladder, right? So you're prescribing them. These are anticholinergics. Now today, this old man, now he presents in a state of delirium. What's the most likely cause? Is the anticholinergic drug that the doctor has prescribed. What's the next best action that you should be taking? Avoid anticholinergic in that person and think about other modalities of treatment. Okay? So try and avoid anticholinergics in elderly. That is delirium. Now, we'll talk about dementia a little, and then we'll do a couple of questions, and then we'll take leave, all right? So, what is dementia? Now, I told you about amnesia, what amnesia was, right? Amnesia, memory, vacuum, gone, right? What is dementia? Dementia is progressive loss of memory. It's progressive loss of memory. So you tend to lose your memory in certain amounts day by day. Like first, what happens is these people who have dementia, they first lose names, okay? Anemia, okay? So they can't name things. They don't know, like, okay, there's this person who's coming. He'll call everybody the same annotation, like, if there's his son coming, he'll call him brother. She doesn't remember the name, but brother can be used for everybody. So whoever is coming, she'll call them all as brothers. And if a female is coming, she'll all call them sisters. Even though if she's more than her age, she's a very little child, she doesn't remember the names, okay? So initially it starts with that, okay? She loses to name things. Then she forgets what things are called, okay? If you ask me, this is a marker, okay? Now, dementia, after a few days, now she forgets that, okay, this is a marker. She must still be able to comprehend that this is used for writing. So when she'll have to use this thing, this word, when she's talking, conversing with someone, she'll say, is this thing which you'll use for writing on the boards? When you say chalk, no, it's not chalk, it's something else. You write on the whiteboard. What is it, like a pen? No, it's not pen, it's like tape. They try to come up with an explanation, but they tend to forget what it's actually called, okay? So in dementia, what we have is, there's apraxia, there's agnosia, there's aphasia. What are these terms? Apraxia, agnosia, aphasia. Apraxia, yeah, tell me. Yeah, aphasia is unable to speak. It's actually, it sounds like we can't smell with agnosia, but the thing is, it's basically dealing with all the sensory modalities. Okay, he can't process the sensory information. Okay, like if you give this marker, if you ask patient to close his eyes, you give this pen to him. Excuse me? Yeah, or even by looking at it, I mean, what's the shape of this? I would say it's cylindrical. They tend to forget that this looks cylindrical or this looks flat like a square. Okay, so they're unable to process sensory information in order to perform a motor activity. Okay, that is agnosia. And then we have apraxia. Apraxia is unable to coordinate and plan and execute motor activities. So apraxia is motor and agnosia is sensory. Sensory modalities, perception is lost, it's agnosia. Okay, and motor functions and planning and coordination is lost, apraxia. Okay, apraxia, agnosia. Then aphasia. So it may be Aphasia is what? Inability to speak. So what are the different ways that a person is unable to speak? Do you call it aphasia even if it's unable to articulate words? What is aphasia basically? Aphasia can be, yeah, sensory aphasia, motor aphasia, global aphasia, conduction aphasia. So if, yeah, this is Wernicke's aphasia, sensory aphasia. Motor aphasia is what? Broca's. Frontal cortex is a defect. Wernicke's. Temporal cortex. To be precise, it is medial, superior. Superior medial, temporal lobe is where the Wernicke's area is, and if that is a defect, the patients, I mean, the sensory things are not coming in. I mean, you're talking a word, they can't really comprehend what it is. They can't, if I say Archana, if she knows Archana in her mind, by the cue, which is here auditory cue, she'll process the information Archana in her Wernicke's area, and there is one memory area from where she can access, okay, Archana is calling me. Okay, so when Wernicke's area is gone, she can't process that information. If I say Archana, she doesn't know like what is it asking. She doesn't know if it's a name, it's an object, or I'm asking her to do something. That is sensory aphasia. In motor aphasia, there's Broca. I mean, she can understand, comprehend things, but she can't speak. Okay, if I'll ask this person, like, you do this thing, he understands the thing. Or if I'll ask, what's your name? He understands that I'm asking his name, but he can't, literally speak that word. That is motor aphasia. Okay. Now, sensory aphasias are egosyntonic. These are ego-dystonic. What is this? What are you talking about, man? What is egosyntonic? What is ego-dystonic? So egosyntonic is, they don't really know that they have a problem with them actually. They just tend to see like, okay, he's talking something which I don't understand, but there's nothing wrong with me. There are some words they can understand because there's no complete aphasia. There are some things that they can access. Okay, so that is egosyntonic. If they think that there's no problem with it. If they think there is problem because now they're able to understand things, but when they're trying to speak, they don't find those words. There's this word salad. Okay, they're putting up all the words together and just battling. Okay, that doesn't make sense. Even they understand that it doesn't make sense what I'm talking. Okay, that is ego-dystonic. These are troubled patients. I mean, they find it really, really embarrassing when they're talking. Okay, these are ego-dystonic. Broca's. Anyways, these will be covered in the neurology section, hopefully. I'm just giving you a general sense of what aphasia is. Here is conduction aphasia, there's global aphasia. Okay? Then loss of abstract thinking. Well, what is abstract thinking? So if I give you a passage, I took the Hound of Baskerville Willis, I gave you a passage, and I want you to comprehend. So what would you do? If I give you a novel and I will say, give me a gist of it, you'll have your abstract thinking put into place, and you'll extract information of what all you studied, and you'll just try to make up, like, okay, this has happened. Or if I say, I part of the Goblet of Fire, okay, there was this match. You'll just give you a brief summary of what has happened, right? So you won't tell to me the whole of the story like it's written in the novel, will you? It's practically impossible. So that is abstract thinking. These people have lost the abstract thinking. Another way to define abstract thinking is like, if I give them like this poem, if I give some Kabir Ke Dohe or something like that, if I give them the poem, what is that poem actually telling you? It's basically giving you some information in a hidden way. He's using something else. He might compare some person with the moon, and he's describing the moon. Basically, what we need to understand from what he's describing is, he's talking about the person, right? So that is abstract thinking, that connection, that is lost. So when I say that there's this moon and I went on there, I had fun time there, it was nice, he would literally think that, yes, probably he might have been on the moon. Okay, that abstract thinking will be gone. Okay, that happens in dementia. Okay, and how about the consciousness and the EEG? So in delirium, we have EEG, which has what? Diffuse slowing. And how about the consciousness? It goes waxing and waning in delirium. In dementia, the consciousness level is absolutely normal. Okay, they're talking to you. And how about the EEG? It's also normal. Okay, so what are the causes of dementia? So before labeling a person to have dementia, you need to make sure that you rule out the organic causes of dementia. Okay, so just in case if there is some organic cause that is causing dementia, it's treatable basically, right? So if you can treat that, your dementia is gone. Instead of labeling them to have, age-old dementia, it's better to treat the organic cause. And if you find that there is no particular cause that is causing dementia, then you go to the irreversible causes. So what are the reversible and irreversible causes of dementia? Reversible and irreversible. The first, foremost, most important organic cause of dementia, which is reversible, is depression. So there's this patient and he has all the signs and symptoms of dementia. First thing that you're going to do, evaluate the patient if the patient has depression. Okay? Look for any underlying symptoms and signs of depression. We'll talk about depression maybe tomorrow. Okay? So first is depression, then vitamin B12 deficiency, then hypothyroidism. So all the features of dementia, what is the next best move that as a physician you're going to take? The options will be, one of the options will be measure TSH level. So you just want to rule out if the patient has hypothyroidism or not. So just by evaluating a TSH level, you know whether the patient has hypothyroidism or not, right? And serum vitamin B12 levels. Okay, rule out depression, rule out B12 deficiency, rule out hypothyroidism, and look for if the patient in the history has syphilis in the past. Because 30, 40 years later, if he had syphilis, and 30, 40 years later, now he might have had neurosyphilis. So it's treatable. Give them penicillin shots. You can treat neurosyphilis. It's also one of the major causes of reversible causes of dementia, right? So depression, B12 deficiency, hypothyroidism, neurosyphilis. Okay, these are a few major reversible causes of dementia. Okay, now what are the irreversible causes of dementia? The irreversible causes are Alzheimer's. First, foremost, most common, Alzheimer's dementia. There's vascular dementia. That is, you have multiple infarcts in your cerebral cortex that has, that has made you lose the ability to remember things. If your motor cortex is, is prone towards infarcts, then you lose memory. Okay? Not exactly motor cortex, your cortical region. It can be sensory or motor as well. Okay? Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, multiple infarct dementia. Okay, and then you have Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, PJD. This is a prion disease. We'll talk about all this in the neurology section. Alzheimer's disease, vascular, then there's Pick's disease. In Pick's disease, what do you have? Frontotemporal dementia. Frontotemporal.
Is it different from Niemann?
No, it's Pick's. Okay, Niemann-Pick's disease is a little different. Pick's disease is different. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in the neurology section. Okay, there's Pick's disease, CJD, frontotemporal dementia with disinhibition. Okay, and there is this Lewy body dementia. Lewy body dementia you'll see in Parkinson's. Parkinson's. These are
There's the
irreversible, because permanent damage to the brain, and hence you have this dementia. Okay, so here's, yes, one more reversible cause of dementia. Reversible cause of dementia is normal pressure hydrocephalus. Normal pressure hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus, that is increased CSF in the ventricles. Increased size of the ventricles and corresponding normal pressure of the CSF. Okay. Now, for some reason, the arachnoid granulations are not absorbing the CSF that is produced every day. So what happens is this CSF builds up. So if it's acute, then you'll have this elevated pressure of CSF, right? But if it's happening gradually over a period of time, so normally, I mean, the pressure tends to be normal, and there'll be ventriculomegaly, like you're seeing on the screen, that these are dilated lateral ventricles. Okay, because of the dilation of if these are the ventricles, and this is the cerebral cortex surrounding it. Okay, this is the brain matter surrounding it. And this is the whole of the brain. Okay, so if these are expanding, actually they're causing pressure. I mean, they're increasing the pressure on the surrounding gray matter, is it not? So because of pressure, the surrounding cortex or surrounding brain matter, parenchyma, is going to atrophy. Okay, so that part of the brain which is close to the ventricles corresponds towards your urinary bladder. So the first symptom that you'll see is these patients can't control their bladder. I mean, they lose the function to have a control over the bladder. So incontinence is a problem. Okay? So the cerebral parenchyma that is adjacent to the ventricles correspond to the urinary bladder, and hence people with normal pressure hydrocephalus will have this problem of incontinence. And in a way, you can say they are wacky, they're wobbly, and wet. Now, why I say this is they have this magnetic gait. Now, what is this magnetic gait? Because of the pressure atrophy, they actually tend to lose this proprioception perception. Okay, they lose this proprioception ability, so they don't know where to put their foot. So they're like, they walk like this. I mean, the 3D imagination or the visuospatial arrangement of where the body is at lack. So they're kind of like sticking to the ground, like they have this magnetic gait. That's the reason why I said they're wobbly, and they're wet because of incontinence, and they're wacky, and they're always irritable. Okay, so wacky, wobbly, and wet. So that is this thing. Okay, so we'll start psychosis maybe tomorrow. But before we leave, I have a few questions. We'll just have a quick review of the questions and then we'll leave. Okay, psychosis I thought we'll be doing today, but okay. Okay, so here you go. Questions for today. It includes topics from yesterday. We'll quickly do these questions and then we'll take leave. I need answers from everybody here. Six-year-old boy is brought to the pediatrician by his mother for his annual checkup. The mother complains that the boy is having trouble making friends. Social communication is a defect. He has making trouble making friends in his class, and he never gets invitations to birthday parties. Okay, she further mentions that it is probably due to his complete obsession with worms. Okay, like I told you, these people have, you know, complete obsession towards doing the same thing repeatedly over and over again. They're like stick on to they stick on to a particular aspect and just keep doing it again and again. Like here it's mentioned that she further mentions that it is probably due to his complete obsession with worms and shy nature. She apparently spends almost the entire day looking for worms in the garden, plays with stuffed worm toys, again worm, and he will only eat properly if he's served spaghetti. I mean, he is like focused on only one thing. Okay, he is not trying new things. He only likes this one. Like I told you, if you give him a novel, he'll read the same novel like 100 times and still not get bored with it. He's still eating spaghetti and still not getting bored with it. Okay, he plays with the worms and he's not getting bored with it. He won't do the same thing over and over again. So we were talking about autism spectrum disorder, wherein people will have difficulty in order to, you know, build relationships, social relationships. They keep doing the same thing over and over again, and they don't get bored with the same thing. So this is an example of autism spectrum disorder. And another clue is he's sitting quietly and looks around the room. He doesn't make eye contact with these people, socially withdrawn. Okay.
The autism spectrum disorder doesn't always mean
The child is? Yeah, it does actually. Does it not? It does. Autism spectrum disorder. Actually, there are a couple of things that were as per DSM-4, like previously there used to be DSM-4 under which there was no autism spectrum disorder. There was this autistic child, there was this mental retardation, and there were so many other diagnoses. Basically, what they did in DSM-5, which came out in 2010 or something, I suppose, what they did is all these various diseases had more or less the same signs and symptoms. They all behaved in a similar manner. So what they did is they just wiped off all those individual diagnoses, put them as under one section like autism spectrum disorder, and all these people come under that. Okay? So it's not ADHD because there's nothing suggesting hyperactivity or attention deficit. It's not normal development. Definitely, the mother says that she's complaining that the boy is having trouble making friends, so that's not normal for a 6-year-old guy. So I told you why milestones come into play. Like at 4 years of age, the child basically starts making friends and plays with them. Is it not? So at 6 years, now here in the history, had it been it's a 3-year-old boy, then you could have said, okay, it's still normal. Because until 4 years of age, they don't make friends, right? So here he is having trouble making friends. He's 6 years old. Definitely it's a problem. So it's not normal development. Yes. Yes, you're right, Amina. Right. And Rett syndrome. What is Rett syndrome? Having regression. There's nothing suggesting regression here. And Tourette syndrome, that vocal or motor tics, there's nothing here. Okay, so the answer is autism spectrum disorder. The next question, quickly. 4-year-old girl is brought to the emergency department by her stepfather. Two people answering. You think it's child abuse? How about you? Child abuse, everybody agrees?
If because we are reading behavioral sciences, like it's child abuse.
Even if you will be reading cardiovascular system, it's still child abuse. Because the account that he's giving here is there's this 4-year-old girl, okay, and there's stepfather, okay, yes, and then just because, I mean, falling down the stairs, do you expect a child to break his leg? there's a rare probability that this could occur. Okay, let's move on further. We'll talk about she's unable to give an account of the accident. So the father might have scared the child that if you're gonna open your mouth, then you'll have to face the same consequences. Okay? That is probably the understanding. Okay, the most important thing here is physical examination showed multiple bruises on the back and forearms, and there's a spiral fracture of the right femur and evidence of old posterior rib fractures. Old posterior rib fractures, now a leg fracture, multiple bruises. Okay, so all this information, so even if you can't prove that this could have been child abuse, but still the suspect, you're suspecting that this could have been child abuse, that's enough for you to make the diagnosis. So this is child abuse. Why is it not normal play injury? Because of the history, we have so many other things. It's not normal play injury. How about osteogenesis imperfecta, collagen defect, type 1 collagen defect?
No, bruise or cardiac symptoms.
Yes, blue sclera is missing, one thing, and the bruises do not explain osteogenesis imperfecta. Osteogenesis imperfecta is because of type 1 collagen, and bruises is basically how you get because of damage to the skin and the blood vessels. So what kind of collagen do you find in blood vessels and skin? Type 2 is in cartilage. Type 1, hardest one is bone, B1, okay, bone, type 1. Type 2 is in cartilage, 2 cartilage, type 2 cartilage. Type 3 and type 5 are basically present in all those organs which are stretchable. Try to memorize it like this. Okay, everything that has the property to stretch will have type 3 and type 5 collagen together, like skin, like blood vessels, like lungs. Any tissue which is stretchable will have type 3 and type 4 collagen. Type 3 and type 5 collagen. Type 4 collagen is present in basement membranes. We just talked about Alport syndrome, type 4 collagen. It's present in the basement membrane. Okay, so osteogenesis imperfecta and osteosarcoma. So there are two things that will rule out osteosarcoma here. One is her age. Osteosarcoma is mostly in the second decade, one thing. The other thing is her account of bruises and all that history doesn't suggest osteosarcoma. So could it be vitamin D deficiency?
They would give some characteristic things like
It could have been vitamin D deficiency if the bruises account was not given. So she has this bruises as well, and that probably suggests child abuse. So child abuse would be the first answer. Probably the second answer would have been vitamin D deficiency. Okay, next question. What? Answers? Somebody's saying C online and here as well. They're thinking it's reaction formation. Okay. Everybody's saying reaction formation. There's one person who's coming up with this answer called dissociation, who's different from others.
passive aggressive between passive and aggressive.
Splitting, okay. You're almost saying all the options. What do you say? You're saying it's reaction formation, okay. So all those people who were saying that it is dissociation are correct and the rest of the answers are wrong. I'll tell you why. Now, here, there's this young boy who has a bizarre behavior at school that alternates between passive and aggressive behaviors. So he's, shifting like a pendulum between passiveness and aggressiveness. These are two ends of the spectrum.
Thinker and speaker, you find two different things.
Okay, we'll talk about it. Just give me a moment. Okay, he either cries and withdraws from sight when he thinks he is being slighted by some manner, or yells wildly and fights over the smallest of infractions. Okay, and the clue here is examination shows he has been victim of significant abuse at home. So since he's been significant, he's under stress, definitely. He's been abused over and over again at home. So he's under stress. Now he has to use one of the defense mechanisms. So which of these defense mechanisms most likely suit to his behavior? We'll talk about identification. What is identification?
Acting like someone else. I do.
Imitating in a subconscious way, right? That is not happening. If that were to happen, if this kid had identification as a defense mechanism, what he would do, he would choose to be aggressive, like his father or whoever is abusing him at home. He would choose to be him, and he would only have aggression towards others. Okay, so it's not identification. Okay, one thing ruled out. Everybody, yes. Now, reaction formation. Most of you said it's reaction formation. What is reaction formation? So there's this weird thought in his mind, and he want to do opposite of what he's actually going through. Now, if this person who was abused at home, and if he were to be really socially withdrawn and be very nice to the rest of the class, instead of fluctuating between being nice and being aggressive, if he were to only be the opposite of what he's been dealt with at home, it would have been reaction formation. Everybody got that? Who answered it was C? So since he's fluctuating between being passive and being aggressive, and the history says that he was abused at home, since he's not being only nice to everybody, it's not reaction formation. Same, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, there's this one person who was talking about splitting. Now, splitting, there are two things. Splitting is most commonly seen in women. The history says he's a young boy. Okay, splitting is seen in borderline personality disorders. So one difference here is the age and sex here. It's seen in women. Women, of like at least 13 years of age. Okay, so here he's a young boy. Okay, there are two differences here. The third thing is, in splitting, what happens is you are a person and you project your feelings towards others. Okay, your perception towards others can be either good or bad. Here, the boy is bullied by his friends or whoever whoever are present in the class. So for the same people, he's acting differently at times. If you see in history, he alternates between passive and aggressive behaviors. If there's a bully who's bullying him, he would either choose to be passive and be bullied, or he would choose to be aggressive and show all his temperament on him. In splitting, there's this person, and on that person, it's your feelings that you are projecting. Okay, here, the patient is choosing to be either of them. Here, because of a particular behavior, you'll characterize him to be a good person, or you'll characterize him to be a bad person. Okay, it's your emotions that are coming out in splitting. Here, the behavior that you're showing is because of the other's behavior. It's the other person who is making you to behave in either a passive manner or an aggressive manner. Okay? So that is the subtle difference between splitting and dissociation here. Now the last one, sublimation. What is sublimation? Sublime.
It's only being nice.
Sublimation is channelizing your emotions into a more socially acceptable and in a more socially acceptable way, which doesn't be in the conflict of interest with the others. Okay, So there's nothing like this here. He was abused at home, and if he were to, go out into the people and he would persuade them not to be a bully, it's being bad to be a bully, and all that. If he would have led a campaign that stop bullying and all that thing, it would have been sublimation. Okay, everybody's understood. Uh-oh. Next question. Quickly, we are running out of time. Okay, there's one answer coming up who's saying fixation, one person saying it's sublimation. Okay. There's another person who's saying fixation. There's one person who says it's reactive formation. Guys, let me tell you, even if you're wrong, it doesn't matter because it's your initial phase of study. So what I would recommend is do as many mistakes as you can, because by doing a mistake, you'll actually discover like why you went on to choose that answer, why you went on to pick that answer, and try to find out like why my answer was wrong and why the others were right. There's another person who's saying sublimation. Okay, the answer to this question is reaction formation. And I'll say why. Because now see, look at this. There's this person who is really angry with her job. What is her job? She's doing something nice to the people who are undocumented. I mean, she cares for them. Her job is basically to care for the people who don't have the access to social services and finding housing, all right? Although in her mind, she actually dislikes her job, but still she's carrying out that job. Is it not the opposite of what she's thinking? It's quite, I mean, she actually hates these people who are not law-abiding citizens. Yeah, sublimation need not be, the opposite of what should be.
Yeah, but she's doing the nice stuff.
It should have been in probably it should have been in a kind of course of action wherein I'll tell you why. I'll just tell you each and everything as to why it was not sublimation. Okay? Now, why is it not dissociation? She's not splitting. She's not shifting her ideas and thoughts between two things. So it's not dissociation. Why is it not fixation? It's not something. Fixation is fixating onto a temporarily fixating onto an act wherein you would do it in your earlier stages of development. Like you play video games when you're under stress, you're eating an ice cream, right? That is fixation. So this is not fixating. Okay. Now, is it splitting? It's definitely not. She has this weird kind of anger towards the people who are not law-abiding citizens. Okay, now, it's not sublimation in one thing. Now, there are these people who are, illegally immigrated into the United States, here in this example. She thinks that these people have broken laws and they are law-abiding citizens. If she would have taken up a rally wherein she would have persuaded that people shouldn't be coming like this and they should rather account themselves to the homeland security and all that. And if she would have let out campaigns that it's not correct on the part of the people to be like this, and Rather, they should abide by the laws and laws that are prescribed in the Constitution. Okay, if she would have come up with that strategy, it would have been sublimation, because she doesn't want those people. She doesn't want those people to get hurt. Okay.
Yeah, even though if it's a bad person, it's put in a good way.
Yeah, in a way, but the major thing here is she likes these people, but it would have been sublimation if the thing that these people are doing, which is causing her to dislike them, if she would have done something so that they would do things which would make them like her, that would have been sublimation. So asking them not to do this in a more acceptable way, instead of showing anger and instead of having grudge on them, rather persuading them not to do this, would have been sublimation. That is why it's not sublimation. Okay. So there are 4 more questions. I think we should be doing it a little quicker. Quickly answer this. Yeah. Archana saying it's Rett syndrome. There's Swapna saying that it's Rett syndrome. There's Amina saying it's Rett. Anybody would like to challenge this answer? Everybody's saying it's Rett syndrome. It's pretty straightforward. She's regressing back, so it's Rett syndrome. Okay, so I don't think we'll have a discussion on this. Do we have to? Everybody got this, right? So Rett syndrome should not be confused with Refsum's disease. They sound similar and they look similar. Rett syndrome, Refsum's disease. Basically, Refsum's disease is liver failure because of people unable to digest chlorophyll. So when they're taking vegetables, they can't digest this chlorophyll, and they tend to have elevated liver enzymes, and they slip into liver failure. So if anybody has watched this House series, there's this classic case of Refsum's disease. Okay, absolutely, anti-chlorophyll diet. Right. Peroxisomal defect, absolutely. Correct. Next question. 25-year-old, theft, prison. Excuse me? This one guy saying it's projection. Display. We'll talk about it. Amina has come up with projection. Nice. Archana hasn't given an answer, and my brother, you haven't given an answer as well. About you. Okay, let's not waste time. We are already lagging. So, 25-year-old male who is convicted of theft and sentenced to prison. Soon after being incarcerated, he accuses his cellmate of stealing an item that he had hidden under his mattress. Okay, basically, what is the history behind it? He's the person who is at fault, right? Okay. Now he is saying that there's some other guy who's taken his something. Okay. You want to shift your answer towards displacement? Okay. There are people who say, they're shifting the answer from projection towards displacement. Now the answer for this question is basically projection. You were right in the first stance, actually. Now why this projection is, because now this person is at fault and he's saying that other people are stealing his things. He is the one who has stolen things, and he's projecting his feelings onto others, on the nurse, on the person who was his roommate, right? He's projecting his feelings onto them. Now, why is it not displacement? Why it is not displacement is, what is displacement? Channelizing emotions from a person of a higher authority to a person who is more acceptable, right? Of a lower person in the hierarchy. Now, a nurse or a person who's an inmate along with this person, they're not below in the hierarchy, right? They're equal to them, or maybe more than them, maybe, could be. So that is the reason why it's not displacement. And how about denial? Denial is like you're not accepting a fact. Now he's in the cell, he knows he's a prisoner, right? So there's nothing suggestive of denial. What is reaction formation? He's not doing something of the opposite. It's not reaction formation. How about repression? No, he's not, he's not choosing to bring something from his previous memory back into this circumstance, right? Repression is choosing not to take an old memory or an old stressful circumstance today, right? It's not regression. Regression is earlier stages of development. Repression is he doesn't remember that the circumstance might have occurred previously in time. Okay. Now that is projection. Now this question.
Patient visits an emergency company. The course of interviewing her, she disclosed that she previous 2 years with similar down the she describes such with her pancreas and with her she appears unveterinary evidences and she resists any suggestion of other.
Okay, people saying it's rationalization. Another person saying Vidatri and Amina both saying that it's rationalization. Okay. Okay. Anything that you'd want to comment about you? Right. You're saying she's in denial? Absolutely, she's in denial. Because she thinks, see, look at the last statement. In stating that drinking is a way for her to treat her pain and drinks are not the cause of any of her symptoms. She believes that drinking is not causing her pain or any of her symptoms. Okay, she thinks that drinking is really, really cool and the rest of her symptoms are because of some other problem, and she's not ready to accept that drinking is what is causing her problems. Doctors have told her before.
She was justifying that no, this is not the cause.
No, if that were to be, if it were rationalization, she would have said that no, drinking is not a bad habit at all. Okay, because drinking has good advantages, like it will decrease my blood cholesterol. Okay, a wine a day will keep me healthy. If she's telling all that stuff, then she's rationalizing with drinking. Or rather, if she would have said that, she would say that drinking is not a problem for me, and that I drink because I lost my husband and I have to cope with that stress. That's the reason why I'm drinking. So she's coming up with a rational, strategy or an idea that okay, she's drinking. Actually, it is bad, but in her case, it's not bad because she's under stress. Okay, if that were to be, it would have been rationalization. Yeah, right. Okay. Last two questions, and we'll pack up. Quickly. What? It's a lengthy question. I'll give you 30 seconds of extra time. Okay, you're saying it's sublimation. Why? Okay. You think the buzzword here is short stories. Okay. There's another person who says it's sublimation. Sublimation. You're thinking it's sublimation as well. Yes. The answer to this question is, anybody who would want to comment? It's critical, equivocal. It's sublimation, actually. You see, there's this really bad thing that has happened to this girl, and now she's, you know, channelizing her emotions, her stressful events that has happened into a more acceptable way and keeping them alive in her stories. Okay, that is the way she's coping with this. Okay, she's drawing these things, and she's comparing them to some superheroes. I mean, she's expecting some superheroes who will come and save them. Actually, she's trying to keep them alive, at least in the stories. Okay, this channelizing the emotions and thoughts into a more socially acceptable way. So this is sublimation. So like I said yesterday, if you go to an art gallery and you see a painting which is really beautiful, what do you say? It's a sublime picture. But why do you say that? Because the artist has portrayed his emotions, his thoughts into this picture, and you can read the artist's mind just by looking at the picture. Okay, what he's trying to say. So that is, he's channelized his emotions and thoughts into some, you know, into a process of drawing or painting here in this example. Okay, so that is a way of coping with a stressful circumstance. So that is sublimation. I hope everybody understood this. Next. Last question for the day. I want everybody to answer this question. D. Somebody says D. Everybody's saying it's D. Mammillary bodies. Absolutely. We just discussed this. He has every possible symptom that will happen in vertigo. And the most important thing here is he's giving you a blood alcohol level. You don't even have to think about all the rest of the stuff. It's a distractor, basically. He's giving you WBC count, hemoglobin, hematocrit, and platelet count, and serum electrolytes. You don't have to even think about it. Just look at blood alcohol level, and you'll get straight to the answer, which is mammillary bodies because of vitamin. So this is a section of gross section of the brain. And every time you deal with questions like this, just for a moment, just go back, just Google it, like cross section of the brain, sagittal and coronal, and just look at all the various parts, because every question is not going to be like question to answer, question to question to question to question to answer. Like there are 4 questions, 4 steps in a question, and you have to derive at a conclusion. That is how step 1 is going to be. That is how they're going to give the score as well. That is how the score pattern actually happens. Okay, it was nice talking to all you guys, and I kind of spent a lot of time talking about ego defenses because these are really, really important. And I'm sure that everybody of you are going to have at least 2 questions in the final exam. So it's really critically important. 2 questions is like what? So much, right? I had questions, like 3 questions from ego defenses only. No. Yeah, I'll come back tomorrow. So there's my friend who took an exam yesterday. He also said that he got 3 questions from ego defenses. So I want you people to emphasize, to focus on ego defenses and try to do as many examples as possible. Talk to friends about how, just, kind of make up the story and see what kind of defenses will act. There can be a same story and there can be different, defense mechanisms which will come into play. So you have to think, why this defense mechanism for this question or this behavior? Okay, try to interpret in that fashion. Tomorrow onwards, we'll talk about schizophrenia, mood disorders, and all that stuff. And you won't be having much questions from my part, because that most of the questions from mood disorders and schizophrenia and all that stuff will be based on the pharmacology. So you want to have this information in order to diagnose from the question stem. So how will we doing that is we'll have question stems and we'll have signs and symptoms, and we'll try to analyze all those signs and symptoms and derive a conclusion. And the questions mostly will be dealt with by the pharmacology part, okay? So mood disorders, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders are what we are left with. We'll try to wind them up as much as possible tomorrow. And on the last day, if time permits, we'll talk about ethics and hospital management, patient-doctor relationships, which are critically important among ethics concepts. And if that were not to happen, I might have to take an extra class for 1 hour or so. And that will be the end of psychiatry, psychology, behavioral sciences, ethics, and general principles. All right, it was nice talking to you guys. I hope you had a good time. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.